Well, the grieving has turned to anger. Anger because this was all too predictable. It's been 3 days since the Bondi massacre and the Prime Minister has failed in his duty, failed to rise to the occasion in this moment of hurt, despair, shock and sadness to reassure us that he is doing everything in his power to ensure this never happens again. The Prime Minister has made only one fleeting visit to the Bondi Memorial, and that was early on Monday morning, and has not gone back since, not once. He didn't attend the funeral today for Rabbi Eli Schlanger. I mean, we essentially have an invisible Prime Minister in a moment of heartache. And what does his Vanishing Act say? Well, to me, it's all about the optics for him, about what it would look like for him if he got heckled at the memorial, just like the Home Affairs Minister Tony Burke did when he came under the cover of darkness on Monday night. The Prime Minister won't even show his face, won't even show an ounce of courage to go out again to Bondi, to read all of those messages of heartache, to speak to the community, to see the tributes that line the footpaths. He won't show his face. And that is not a Prime Minister. A good leader doesn't shy away from criticism. They aren't scared of being heckled or booed. They face it head on and critically listen, make change and unite the country. Anthony Albanese missed the moment, more scared about being booed. Well, compare that to being scared while running away while being shot at. Former Treasurer and prominent member of the Jewish community, Josh Frydenberg, paid his respects at the Bondi Memorial today. And this was a very emotional moment for him because he's been at the heart of the anti-Semitism battle. And Josh Frydenberg summed up the mood of the nation in a way the Prime Minister has failed to.
This massacre at Bondi is the greatest stain on this nation, has brought the greatest shame to our nation. I'm here to mourn, but I'm also here to warn. Unless our governments, federal and state, take urgent, unprecedented and strong action, as night follows day, we will be back grieving the loss of innocent life in another terrorist attack in our country.
And he's right. We know those warnings have been there. Anthony Albanese's very own special envoy, Gillian Siegel's report, has sat on his desk catching dust for 6 months. State leaders were forced to push the PM on if he had any new ideas on how to tackle anti-Semitism after they had to stop him from talking about gun reform and focus in on more detail on anti-Jewish hate during an emergency meeting of National Cabinet this week. It was reported he didn't even raise Gillian Siegel's report at that meeting. Now, the PM claims that's not the case, but he won't even say if he directly raised the report before he was prompted. So my question now is, why hasn't the Prime Minister recalled Parliament this week as an emergency to pass legislative recommendations in the wake of the attack? If what happened at Bondi means anything, if the deaths of 15 people is not enough for the Prime Minister to get a move on, then nothing is ever going to change, and I despair for this country. But it seems it's all in the too hard basket for Anthony Albanese. Here was his response today when asked about what he can do to fight radical Islamic preachers.
It is difficult, and this is something the world is dealing with. It is indeed, as you identify, hard to legislate against such massive hatred and people who have this perversion of Islam that leads them to support Islamic State and to have a view that somehow there is some reward for them. There is not. They are evil. We need to make sure that we do whatever is within our powers. Now, that means education. It means as well stamping out, calling out evil when we see it. and will continue to do so, not just as a government, but as a nation as well.
It's hard to legislate. That was his answer. The nation is grieving right now and the Prime Minister says it's too hard. And he can't even say it out loud, that this attack was motivated by religion. It was Islamic extremism. And the answers on what to do are right in front of you, this Prime Minister, because this is the message of hate that's being preached just 30 kilometres away from the site of the Bondi massacre.
Can't take away from the fact, first and foremost, that jihad is definitely part of our deen. And as Muslims, we should never ever shy away from this. And yes, there may be types of jihad, but of the peak of this jihad is that which the Messenger Muhammad ﷺ spoke about, and I'll read the hadith soon. And that is fighting in the path of Allah Azza wa Jal. A physical fight.
So what can you do, Prime Minister? Go to the mosques and shut those preachers down. Shut down Islam centres like the Al Madina Dawah Centre in Bankstown that's been linked to alleged Bondi gunman Naveed Akram. If they're preaching hate, arrest them. If they're dual citizens or on visas, deport them. Call on Muslim leaders to step up and call out radical Islam. Overhaul the migration system. Implement better checks and balances for people coming into this country. Use whatever means possible to screen people already here. If their values don't align, send them back to where they came from. And better funding for security agencies. Ban extremism organisations. Come on, Prime Minister. Here was Opposition Leader Susan Lee on that today.
And the roadmap to that immediate action is sitting on the Prime Minister's desk. And there are more things that he could be doing and should be doing in the wake of this horrific massacre. But has he told the Australian people? Has he reassured the Jewish community? Is he here at Bondi? Has he walked the streets as we have? Has he listened?
And there was also an astonishing concession of sorts from Foreign Minister Penny Wong that the Albanese government must do more to combat rising anti-Semitism.
We are determined to eradicate anti-Semitism in our country, and we are determined to work to bring Australians together. I keep saying this, but it is true. We are stronger when we are more united. And there is much in our community that we can look to that gives us hope and inspiration.
Look, this is an insult. Now, she says more needs to be done. Now that 15 innocent people have been murdered in cold blood. For 2 years, this government has sat on its hands as anti-Semitism wreaked havoc and our social fabric buckled. Where was the condemnation when the Israeli flag was set alight on the steps of the Sydney Opera House, or when "Where are the Jews" or whatever was chanted? When the Sydney Harbour Bridge was hijacked by protesters who chanted death to the IDF and waved flags of terror groups like Hamas? Or when the radical hate preachers bragged about October 7? Where was the condemnation and where was the action? You were nowhere, Penny Wong, and neither was Anthony Albanese. Too preoccupied with recognising a Palestinian state and putting votes before values. So spare us your "we are stronger when we are more united and more needs to be done" lecture. It's an insult. And Josh Frydenberg put it so well today as he called for a royal commission.
It's time for him to accept personal responsibility for the death of 15 innocent people, including a 10-year-old child. It's time our Prime Minister accepted accountability for what has happened here. And it's time our leaders stood up and led at last. Australia has been radicalised in an unprecedented way in the last 2.5 years on your watch. And you are now responsible for fixing it. And you must fix it. Otherwise, there will be another attack. And we wouldn't have learnt the lessons that are here for everyone to see.
The time for excuses is over. It was over 2 years ago. But now is the time for change, and the time for action is now. Wake up, Anthony Albanese.